This is part of a larger campaign, which again, I have talked about on the show so many times of people. It's amazing. And I'm not trying to say this in a supercilious or wagging the finger kind of way, but it's amazing how many people I encounter and they have no idea about any of this. They have no idea about the extent of the infiltration that China has in our country. And by the way, it's so interesting that in this show, kind of the first part of it is about wokeism. The second part of it is about China. That's hand in glove, right? Because that's a domestic threat, wokeism. China is an international threat, but China is also stoking the fire and fanning the flames of wokeism. If you look at TikTok, which is a Chinese-backed company, the parent company of TikTok is ByteDance, which is a Beijing-backed company. If you look at TikTok, which has over 150 million users in the United States, so over half of our country's on TikTok, that is where so much of our political radicalism comes. We have kids who are saying they're getting like twitches from TikTok. They're developing like Tourette's or like literally like twitching because they're watching people who are doing that and it's having an effect on them. We see kids who are questioning their gender. There was a great book by Abigail Schreier who traces that so much of the gender confusion that has proliferated among young Americans is because of TikTok and because of other social media platforms. And so with China knows exactly what it's doing. It's planting all of this poison to get people addicted in the United States, to make us morally, spiritually, genderly, etc. confused. And TikTok in their country is like, they have farming techniques. And they have like how to build a computer, how to, shortcut this thing on the computer. It's all about like bettering yourself. And they have time limits on TikTok in China.
I guess that's kind of like YouTube over here, where people are using it to learn things. But I'm not on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, but I get alerts on my phone multiple times a day telling me people love TikTok and to sign up for it. It's like an invitation almost daily. I'm swiping to make those things disappear. I don't know what's more annoying, those things to join TikTok or text from Nikki Haley. I'm just not sure.
I get those too. I'm like, why are you texting me? That's so funny. Well, I got a text from Adam Schiff the other day. I wrote back in all caps, "Don't you ever text me again." Oh, I hate that guy. But, it's actually something I want to raise. I'm not on TikTok, as many of you probably know. I am on Instagram and Twitter, though, at Julie R. Hartman, if you want to follow me. But so many people, including conservatives, actually especially conservatives, who are aware of the threat that China faces and they're on board with combating them, they have advised me to go on TikTok. And I'm really conflicted about it because on the one hand, I don't want to give credence to this evil, America-hating, America-infiltrating regime that not only poisons our minds, but spies on us through TikTok. Joe Rogan went through the terms of service of TikTok, and it's literally like they can look at what you type, they can look at your file names, the contents of your files, they can have access to your camera. It is scary stuff. They are looking at you and your life and everything on that phone. So I don't want to give that to them, but also maybe I use their infrastructure to undermine them, to reach more people, to spread truth, beauty, goodness in the American way. I don't know. So if you guys have thoughts on it, I welcome them. But I just want to rattle off some more examples. And we have to know about this. And we have to be aware of it, especially, I'm sorry to be heavy-handed, when we vote this November. In addition to this cybersecurity threat, in addition to TikTok and WeChat, these apps that China has to spy on us and to poison our minds, China seizes between $255 and $600 billion annually in our intellectual property. They harass anti-CCP candidates. For example, Yan Zhiyong, it was a New York congressional candidate in 2022, and he was born in China, and he came over here and ran for New York Congress. And the CCP put out all of these smear campaigns against him. They hired people to assault him. It's unclear if those people were hired to kill him, but they were hired to physically harm him. The Epoch Times did a whole spread on how the CCP, through advertisements, through actually like human plants here in the United States, have tried to subvert our election system. They also have a foothold in education. Since 2004, the CCP has funded over 100 Confucius Institutes, which, according to the State Department, quote, push out skewed Chinese language and cultural training for U.S. students as part of Beijing's multifaceted propaganda efforts.
Julie, I know you have a long list here, and I want to hear the rest
Oh,
of it. But
I'm going.
I don't want to brush over what you talked about stealing of the intellectual property. This is a very crazy thing that they do. I use crazy too much. But they steal
I use interesting too much.
our property, and they make a cheaper version and then sell it back to
Yep.
us, and we buy it.
Yep.
And nothing is stopping us from doing that. That is something you could do if you can afford to. Don't buy the cheap Chinese knockoff. Buy American.
Well said. Yes, that's a very good thing. You're right. And what you also just remarked is worth highlighting, that we allow this to happen. Not just with the intellectual property, with TikTok. We know China's spying on us and seizing our data and poisoning our minds. We still do it. I know many people who are like, well, it's too late. I'm addicted to it, whatever. We have this jade. Can you imagine? Like, I think, what if 60, 80 years ago, or 100 years ago in the United States, there was an equivalent, given the context of the time, if there was some kind of spying campaign. I think Americans would be far more outraged and far more redoubled in their motivation to counter that than we are now. We just throw our hands in the air. So I'm rattling these off, but any one of these, we need to process the gravity of it. But China also opened a spy base on Cuba in 2019 to spy on our American military bases in Florida. They buy farmland next to our bases so that they can spy on us. Again, we're just we don't care. They're not even hiding it. They're not even trying to be covert about it. They know that we don't care, and they still do it.
I'm wondering if that also is the cost or a tax of freedom. We are open, and we inevitably invite this threat without consequence.
Yep.
Because we are free, and
yes,
we need to pay attention to it.
Yes.
And you may not like Donald Trump, orange man, but he's much tougher on China than Uncle Joe over there. So for maybe that reason alone, you might want to vote for the orange dude. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying too.
These threats
but I'm
are
not
real.
saying it.
We're not paying attention to it, and we want to remain free, but we have to protect ourselves to some level.
This again is where we're not responsible with our freedom. We're reckless with our speech. We're reckless with the things that we advocate for, and we're also reckless with we can use TikTok, so we do. Well, even though you can, maybe you shouldn't, because maybe it's a better service to your country to knock the CCP's infiltration off when you can. So also, of course, we had that spy balloon fiasco. And speaking of American strength, it is amazing to see how much cover our current president does for the Chinese regime, which, as I'm going to talk about in a few moments, isn't surprising given that there is massive amounts of evidence that he is bought off by the Chinese regime. Yet another example of their infiltration. But let's watch President Biden give credence to the CCP story that, the spy balloon last year was just a mistake.
China, Mr. President, can Secretary Blinken ease tensions with China on this trip, do you think?
Sure. Well, look, China has some legitimate difficulties unrelated to the United States. And I think one of the things that balloon caused was not so much that it got shot down, but I don't think the leadership knew where it was and knew what was in it and knew what was going on. I think it was more embarrassing than it was intentional. And so I'm hoping that over the next several months,
they are seeing that they are allowed to infiltrate us, and then they're seeing that our president is furthering their story, furthering their excuse. And by the way, fentanyl, another thing. China makes and manufactures the fentanyl, sends it to Mexican drug cartels who are, thanks to that man you just saw, are funneling it across our border at unprecedented rates. Also, sorry, Shanzi, one quick thing. The amount of Chinese nationals flooding across our border is also at a record high. This is a crazy statistic. In the fiscal year 2023, there were 24,000 Chinese nationals coming across. Fiscal year 2023, there were 24,000 Chinese nationals coming across the southern border. In 2021, 450. There are more Chinese nationals coming in the past year, in the past 6 months, than the previous 15 years combined. Of course, not all of them are CCP-backed spies, but given what you know, what I just told you, are you telling me that there aren't some that are CCP-backed spies? You can speak now,
Yeah,
misinformation.
I'm sorry.
By the way, I have the urge to call you Miss Independent, which is the Neo song. You're both.
Joe Biden characterized the balloon as more embarrassing than intentional.
Right.
I want to characterize Joe Biden as more embarrassing than intentional.
Amen.
Yeah.
And then finally, I do want to talk just quickly about the ways that the CCP has bought off Mr. More Embarrassing Than Intentional. Hunter Biden's business partner got a $3 million wire transfer from China, and there is evidence, according to the subpoenaed bank records and the Hunter Biden laptop emails, that many of it was doled out to members of the Biden family. In that infamous email between Hunter Biden's business partner and Ye Jianming, who is like one of Xi Jinping's friends, literally. He is the owner of the Chinese energy company CEFC. He was emailing with Hunter Biden's business associate, and they infamously talked about how 10% would go to the big guy, who Hunter Biden's business associate testified under oath that it was President Biden. The Penn Biden Center in Washington, D.C., where the classified documents were discovered, somehow gets $900,000 in annual funding from China. And Hunter Biden had a meeting with a Chinese energy tycoon, backed, or CCP connected guy. Every business owner in China is a CCP connected person because the CCP approves of every single business in China. And the guy gave Hunter a 3-carat diamond after the meeting, and Hunter denied it. And Di Dongzhang, who's the vice dean at the School of International Relations at Renmin University in China, said in November of 2020, after President Biden was elected, that people in China have been, quote, utilizing the core power of the United States. And he talks about how, quote, Biden's son has got some sort of global foundation. Who helped him build those foundations? Got it? So essentially the guy's saying, we helped him build it. We've got Biden bought off. Cool. Well, let's play, just quickly, what President Biden said in the last State of the Union about China.
Before I came to office, the story was about how the People's Republic of China was increasing its power and America was failing in the world. Not anymore. Today, we're in the strongest position in decades to compete with China or anyone else in the world. Anyone else in the world.
Let's listen to more of what he said in that State of the Union.
We face serious challenges across the world. But in the past 2 years, democracies have become stronger, not weaker. Autocracy has grown weaker, not stronger. Name me a world leader who changed places with Xi Jinping. Name me one. Name me one.
Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan are definitely democracies which have gotten stronger, not weaker. And then finally, let's listen to this infamous clip of then candidate Biden in 2019 at a campaign rally saying, China's going to eat our lunch. Come on, man.
China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. They can't even figure out how to deal with the fact that they have this great division between the China Sea and the mountains in the west. They can't figure out how they're going to deal with the corruption that exists within the system. I mean, they're not bad folks, but guess what? They're not competition for us.